it's hard to convince yourself to say, hey, we should trade a guy who's, by the way, been with the franchise for his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And let's trade this guy who is on probably like, okay, the contract stuff, the financial implications again. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, when you're already really good and you've started off the season well, and hey, maybe there's a chance you can be frisky in the playoffs and get to the conference finals, or the in-season tournament, hey, there's a chance the Timberwolves could win that thing, and that would be huge for this franchise too. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I know it's a great, I want to talk to you about the in-season tournament after too, but I mean, like, there's more at stake than just, hey, trade him because this is not working out right now. Okay.
But we should tie that into the financial thing, because it's so they're so
Are we going to talk? Let's talk about it now.
We should do it because it's like it totally cannibalizes your chances of going to the Western Conference Finals this year.
Yeah,
if you make a cost-cutting move or roster rearrangement move to let Cat go,
right?
Give away that that it's not happening this year.
Well, also you're not going to get a lot right now,
exactly, because of how big his contract is. But he makes $36 million this year, and it jumps to $52 next year, and that's a $16 million gap right there. And they're already at the second apron line with that 52, and that's with Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson, unrestricted free agents. And this team, I promise you, does not work without those two guys.
Well, I mean, so, if you look at the numbers, it absolutely does not work without those two guys.
Numbers, watch it, whatever. Yeah. Know those two guys, like, that's the real thing. Know Kyle Anderson and Mike Conley, like, critical for Ant, for Carl, for Rudy, for Finch. Yeah. They love those two guys. They need them. And so it, like, kind of, well, as this will naturally be a topic of conversation come the trade deadline, is, people will look at the financial figures and talk about Cat. Like, there's an argument to be made there too. That is like, all right, you do trade Cat for whatever. It means you get to keep Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson next season. You can re-sign them maybe with that 16-20 million of space that you would have below the second apron line. So it's a fair conversation. It's just that conversation can only be brought up while acknowledging that if you trade him at the deadline, you all but give up your shot on this being a year or the year. It's only going to get harder from a roster construction standpoint going forward, because Ant jumps up from 13 this year to 37, 44 if he makes All-NBA. Jaden goes up from like $4 million this year to 25 next year. By the way,
Ant is probably getting to an All-NBA.
And that's a big part of this finance. I mean, he's probably going to make All-NBA if he stays healthy, right? Like, so we probably should be thinking about Ant jumping from 13 to 44 rather than 13 to 37. So it's just going to be an extremely expensive team that in many ways is going to be very difficult to hold together, even if you have ownership's green light to pay the luxury tax.
So I was going to ask that.
The second apron? I don't know.
That's the part I was going to ask. It's okay, ownership is changing, right? They haven't fully paid out whatever sum it is. That's still kind of in proxy, whatever is happening on that
December,
end. Right. But ultimately, like, it's inevitably going to change over. Do you think they are more... The Walmart CEO guy is going to cough up that more money? You know what I mean? Like, is that possible? Do you think it'll be...
We got to talk about how much the money is, man. And this is the real second apron thing. Yeah. It's like, and I will just point out by saying this: Golden State and the Clippers made cost-cutting moves because of the second apron already. They already did that. And Steve Ballmer is as rich as it gets. That was letting go of Eric Gordon, right? And Steve Ballmer is as rich as it gets as personal wealth of an owner in the NBA. And then Joe Lacob and the Warriors, I don't know, I mean, his net worth is not the same as Ballmer's, but that's as profitable of a business as any team there. And those two teams have already made provisions in place to not exceed the
So what you're saying is it's inevitable, right? Like, they're essentially...
No, I'm saying that I think a lot of teams are not going to pay the second apron tax just because of what the tax bill is. Not even because you lose your mid-level exception or your pick gets magically frozen into the future. Any of that. So, like, that's its own thing. That's a thing. I actually don't think that's super important in the context of the Wolves. Like, I'm not sure they need a full mid-level exception next season. Yeah. But I mean, we're talking about like maybe $130 million in just a tax payment if you exceed the second apron, or more than that, depending how much you go over that. That's a check. That's a cash check. You can't leverage your other businesses or whatever to pay a 1 season second apron exceeding luxury tax payment. That's no joke. Like, plus you don't get the disbursement of the other teams that pay the luxury tax and get that money back too. So if they don't agree to go into the second apron or exceed the second apron, I don't think that can be considered like ridiculous bad ownership. I mean, I'm not saying that to defend A-Rod or Laurie or anything. Like, what, we don't even know them yet all that well. Objective. We're on the objective podcast, right?
Yes,
objectively,
we are trying to be objective here. Yeah, absolutely.
Objectively, that's a huge payment to pay, and I don't think the Wolves or a lot of teams will pay this beyond the second apron. Yeah. It just doesn't. We'll see. I guess we'll see. This is new. This is all new, and the Wolves are in the nexus of it, you know, and it's the funny thing where we can't. Oh, it's the salary cap that can't exceed. Well, you can exceed all of these numbers. You can pay the luxury tax if you want to. It just comes out of your owner's pockets. So, and if they want to win over this fan base once they take over, you pay a fat luxury tax payment. You privately fund a new stadium. Like, Minnesota will
praise all them like the gods. Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because they've been good. They've been objectively very good. And there is a chance that they can make some noise this year, whatever that noise may be. And you have to question, it's like, well, how much are we going to cough up in order to do that? And also, hey, you have this superstar face of the league potential type of guy in Anthony Edwards, and he might be good enough right now. He's probably going to get better. He's inevitably going to get better, but he might be good enough right now to win you a couple of playoff series. And how is that going to look? Maybe we're getting into doom and gloom way too much for a team that's at the top of the Western
Conference.
No,
it is an objective conversation. There's timelines here to this. And you're at the end of a timeline right now. And so things are going to change from cost and thus a roster construction standpoint at some point. There's a decision tree to be made here, starting at the deadline. But if you're not trading Karl at the deadline, then in the summertime, and you have to ask yourself how ready Ant is to do that, you know. And obviously we got 2 really good playoff series from him at age 20 and 21. He's 22 now. It kind of comes down to, do you believe he can be that dude now? He's going to be that at some point, right?
But it's about now. It's about the short term here.
The roster's about now.
Yeah.
And you can have, that's a whole nother existential conversation of whether it was the right idea to go all in and make an all in move for Rudy Gobert when Anthony Edwards was 21. Yeah.
Well,
but
they did.
What I'm saying, it's done. It's done, and they're in now, and all the outside markers economically, whatever, suggests like this is a pretty good time to go, and the play has been good enough to go. So go now, and I don't know. This summer it gets funky. I just can't get over it's a totally different proposition from another team to trade for Karl-Anthony Towns when his matching salary is 36 versus 52. You get the supermax no matter what is tacked on there. But you got to have the matching salary of 36 versus 52. Like, you can maybe fill up 36 of expiring coming back if you do it 50, at the deadline.
That's tough.
But, I don't think you're getting, it will be the offseason at that point, so expirings will have expired. Yeah. And now you're taking back 52 just to match at that point. Like, that's a lot of players. We just went through that with Gobert. They had to trade 5 players to match Gobert's $40 million salary. It's going to be the same thing if you want to invert it and go the other way.
Follow hosts at Just S. Barahini on all socials and at The Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA to you like no other.